think it's funny how my critics will say that race doesn't exist and then turn around and call me racist.
Race does not exist in scientific terms or natural law, nor does it have any relevance in social organization. The term racist is a subjective term since it does not exist out in the real world. It can be used however the person feels. Obviously, not believing in race wouldn't prohibit nor make anyone a hypocrite for using the term, for it is just a subjective term to describe a certain behavior. For example, if I'm debating with someone who's exhibiting notions about ostracizing a group based on physical features, then I would use the term racist for the sake of the argument. The thing about race is no one has defined it clearly enough. When I say race doesn't exist, I'm speaking with respect to how white separatists view race, as behavior-determining factors, which is provably not the case.
It's a very dirty word. The term has never been used neutrally or positively. It's inherently negative. It's got negative connotations. It was designed by Marxists for liberals to turn something natural and beneficial into something unnatural and negative.
Marxist and liberals. Now notice the blank assumption and projection she just made, that the term racist is associated with Marxists and liberals. At this point, it becomes more of an emotional tirade. You can always tell when there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance, when someone becomes emotional making absurd statements. If you ask any psychologist or neurologist who studies behavior whether dividing people up based on ethnicity is a good idea, they will tell you that it's detrimental to social organization. All it does is amplify xenophobia. Not to mention the economic stratification that comes from the idea of race. And obviously I could go on a tirade about Hitler and slavery, etc., but those are pretty self-evident refutes of the race ideology.
To reinforce their notion of a utopia.
Again, using the labels like utopia or liberals or Marxists are just another tactic to keep her followers and people who believe in these ideologies in line. Because if a white separatist were to wake up tomorrow and start to question these invalid ideas, they would automatically be labeled a utopianist or a Marxist and ostracized by their community. It's simply another fear tactic.
Utopia. You see, you've got to remember that the Marxists want this classless, raceless society. They want to eliminate the ruling class. They want to eliminate hierarchy.
Well, you have to ask yourself, what are the harms of having a stratified society? As we know now with our current economic research, the more stratified a nation, whether it be in Norway or Africa, the more crime, distrust, and all-out violence occurs because of class division. So you guys can make up your own mind on that subject.
You all know the truth of what I'm going to say. I think the intuition that inequality is divisive and socially corrosive has been around since before the French Revolution. What's changed is we now can look at the evidence. We can compare societies, more and less equal societies, and see what inequality does. There are extraordinary social gradients in health, running right across society. This again is life expectancy. These are small areas of England and Wales, the poorest on the right, the richest on the left. Not a difference between the poor and the rest of us. Even the people just below the top have less good health than the people at the top. So income means something very important within our societies and nothing between them. The explanation of that paradox is that within our societies we're looking at relative income or social position, social status, where we are in relation to each other and the size of the gaps between us.
Any kind of group conformity, any kind of identity they want to eliminate.
When she speaks about identity, it's pretty obvious she's referring to the identity with respect to ethnicity, which again has no relevance regarding one's personality or behavior. And to point out this again, the fact of interbreeding that has gone on for so long make race notions obsolete with respect to social organization. People can identify with their country, their career, their accomplishments. I mean, the plasticity of the human mind allows for many forms of identity. You have to remember the identity you have has been shaped and formed by your culture.
They want total equality, 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 equality.
So we also looked we did a paper in the British Medical Journal on the UNICEF Index of Child Wellbeing. It has 40 different components put together by other people. It contains whether kids can talk to their parents, whether they have books at home, what immunization rates are like, whether there's bullying at school. Everything goes into it. Here it is in relation to that same measure of inequality. Kids doing worse in the more unequal societies, highly significant relationship. But once again, if you look at that measure of child well-being in relation to national income per person, there's no relationship, no suggestion of a relationship. What all the data I've shown you so far says is the same thing. The average well-being of our societies is not dependent any longer on national income and economic growth. That's very important in poorer countries, but not in the rich developed world. But the differences between us and where we are in relation to each other now matter very much.
Everyone is going to work and give according to their ability. Everyone's going to receive according to what they define as your individual needs are, and nobody's going to get what they deserve.
Work and give according to their ability. Okay, well, if someone studies hard, works hard, and meets the requirements or exceeds the requirements for a specific job, wouldn't it make sense that they get that job over someone who isn't qualified? I honestly don't understand how they wouldn't deserve that. Then again, what is deserved? Paris Hilton, for example, makes money off of reality TV and simply being foolish on camera, as opposed to a scientist working in a lab struggling to get funds to continue research on cures for diseases. I really don't understand how you can say everyone's going to work according to their ability is a bad thing.
Anything that stands in the way and obstructs their notion of utopia, they're going to paint as a false concept. They're going to paint it as immoral and evil. And racial identity is something that falls into that construct. So, of course, they're going to paint it as bad. People use the term subjectively to mean what they want it to mean. It's got no distinct ideology. It's an interpreted concept. So it doesn't mean anything at all. Racial preference is not racism, no matter how you define it. At worst, it's discrimination or prejudice, but it's not racist, but it's not racist either. I just think the term racism is an illegitimate concept. The term refers to a whole host of ideas and behaviors and outlooks and perspectives that may or may not even be related at all. Whenever the label racism is thrown around, it's the result of natural behaviors and tendencies.
I notice she throws the term natural around a lot and continues to undermine the role environment plays in behavior.
One of the most crazy-making yet widespread and potentially dangerous notions is, oh, that behavior is genetic. Now, what does that mean? It means all sorts of subtle stuff if you sort of know modern biology, but for most people out there, what it winds up meaning is, a deterministic view of life, one rooted in biology and genetics. Genes equal things that can't be changed. Genes equal things that are inevitable and that you might as well not waste resources trying to fix, might as well not put societal energies into trying to improve because it's inevitable, it's unchangeable. And that is sheer nonsense. Great additional example of the ways in which genes are not be-all, end-all. Fancy technique where you can take a specific gene out of a mouse, that mouse and its descendants will not have that gene. You have knocked out that gene. So there's this one gene that codes for a protein that has something to do with learning and memory, and this fabulous demonstration, knock out that gene, and you have a mouse that doesn't learn as well. Ooh, a genetic basis for intelligence. What was much less appreciated in that landmark study that got picked up by the media left and right is take those genetically impaired mice and raise them in a much more enriched, stimulating environment than your normal mice in a lab cage, and they completely overcame that deficit. So When one says in the contemporary sense that, oh, this behavior is genetic, to the extent that that's even a valid sort of phrase to use, what you're saying is there is a genetic contribution to how this organism responds to environment. Genes may influence the readiness with which an organism will deal with a certain environmental challenge. You know, that's not the version most people have in their minds. And not to be too soapboxing, but run with the old sort of version of it's genetic, and it's not that far from a history of eugenics and things of that sort. It's a widespread misconception, and it's a potentially fairly dangerous one.
Common sense, biological impulses. And before the naturalistic fallacy, sometimes what's natural is what's best. Sometimes what's natural is beneficial. Or you can be one of those philosophical, question everything people. Well, what's natural? What is reality? What is beneficial? Anything that happens in reality is natural. It's just all these loopholes designed to evade the topic. Anyway, these natural feelings stand in the way of the Marxist ideology. It obstructs it. You've got to remember they require a blank humanity. No preconceived notions, no impulses, no instincts, no ideas, no thoughts, no group identity.
Again, notice how anyone who disagrees with her is labeled a Marxist. These idiotic assumptions that somehow cultures coming together will create a blank society. When, if you look at any diverse area, you will see the sharing of clothing, art, foods, music, dance, philosophy, etc. Different cultures coming together to express and share ideas, which by far is one of the most important aspects of any human civilization, obviously. Think about it. This entire country was built on cultures mixing. You can tell when someone has no real response to the evidence when they start to go on an emotional tirade filled with assumptions and projections based on their own fear and insecurity.
Like that racism concept as they define it, as something negative, inherently negative, as something false. It doesn't go beyond the 20th century.
As scientific evidence accumulates, we grow out of superstitious notions and outdated ideologies. Just as a child might look upon the world and believe it's flat because of the surface appearance, she grows up, learns to critical think, and make better analysis of the world. The same exact mindset applies to these ideologies of separatism or racial inequality. Just like the child, these people who uphold these beliefs make simplistic, surface associations with the world around them, never taking the time to critical think or really understand the inherent fallacy within their beliefs. Instead, they dig up outdated scientific theories that have been disproved to simply make their beliefs seem valid to impressionable minds of people who know nothing about these subjects.
So, I laugh whenever I hear it. I just think it's so stupid. So, that's why I think it's an illegitimate concept.
The old appeals to racial, sexual, and religious chauvinism, to rabid nationalist fervor, are beginning not to work. A new consciousness is developing which sees the earth as a single organism and recognizes that an organism at war with itself is doomed.